So good afternoon, everyone. I would say if you don't find your name on the paperboard at 4 p.m., it's not because you play the death for the game. It's just because maybe there are some issues, but you will find your name. So I'm really pleased to share this session on layers, and I would say on the output of layer, which is egg, I would say. And I think it's quite interesting. And we are all facing the same issue, in fact. We are facing the issue of increasing the demand on the consumption of animal protein. And I think it's important that we all collaborate and cooperate to fulfill this demand from the world growth population. Obviously, it might have difference depending on regions, and I think François will address the issue in Europe, but thinking about the worldwide basis, it's quite interesting. And we are facing various situations when you talk about animal protein production. Obviously, the first thing is the growth, and if you think not in feed growth or bird meat growth and so on, but the protein growth, in fact, it's important to realize that 1.7% per year increase has been, I would say, mentioned several times by FAO, and that is ending up, if you take the feed conversion, to more than 3.5 to 4% in the feed. So it's really a big demand on the animal protein production for the future. And these are some issues. Obviously, there is an economic pressure on that. Means that today there is some variation in the price of the feedstuff, in the price of the output, the meats, the eggs, and so on. There is also a market concentration. So you can see here several mentioned to say how we are living in a very demanding world and with a lot of economic pressure, and you know that. And also on the societal, we could say environmental pressure, but also the society. And I think François will address the evolution, and particularly in Europe, but which is the case worldwide, on some big changes on the production. In Europe, we talk about the free-range animals and the no-cage or cage-free layers, I would say. But when you talk about the antibiotic ban, growth promoter ban in the world, it's spreading very quickly. Just here in the Netherlands, I remember a conference years ago about the AGP ban. And if you remember, some years ago, there was the participation from the States. And they always said, oh, it's a problem of Europe. It's not a problem of the rest of the world. But now it's spreading everywhere, including US. And they even go further with the no antibiotic forever. So I think it's a very big challenge for the future. When we look at the layers, and it's important to realize that the egg is a very interesting food for the human population. And just, it's an old figure, but I suppose that François will maybe give more updated figures. But here it's a worldwide figure back 2011 on the egg consumptions. And I would say it's always surprising to see the Mexican having 1 egg per day, I would say, per person, roughly on the basis. It's interesting to see also, we always talk about the whole eggs, but more and more now there is a development of the egg products, so the byproduct of the eggs, the transformation of the eggs. And that is even a greater increase in the last years in all the countries. And one of the objectives, I think, I try to summarize what could be the objective of the layer producers. And when you travel around the world, you see most of the people are trying to prolong the laying cycle of the hens. And for years, I remember people were stopping, I would say, trials around 62 or even before. But now we are talking about more 70, 78. And even there is a big question of prolonging up to 100 weeks of age and try to maintain the level of production. And today, with the genetic potential, we are able, in fact, to sustain quite a very high level of production for at least quite a great number of weeks. So I think it's important. But facing that, we are also different period in the laying cycle. With the initial period, we all want to get a good onset of lay, less, I would say, variability between the flocks, more homogeneous starting of the lay. After, we want to maintain, and that the genetic potential is there, so you can see today more than 92%, 94% laying rate on the optimum beginning. But after, at the end, we are often challenged because we are trying to prolong, but we don't want to increase too much the egg weight to change the characteristics and the output after. And also, we are challenged by the eggshell quality, and that is a big, also a big issue. And I would say today, just when you make the calculation, just by prolonging for 10 weeks, you could get more 40 euro per ton of eggs. That's quite a big value. So today, people are really trying to push more. And I visited Central America where they try to push up to 100 weeks. Due to the avian flu before and so on, they try to compensate by prolonging the flocks as long as possible. But that is an issue. And if we try to summarize what could be the issues, and we'll try to see tomorrow if we fulfill that, I would say. First is, I would say, improving the duration of the laying performance. So, as I say, more homogeneous beginning and rapid onset of lay. Longer laying period with no compromise on the egg quality. Obviously, a big issue for all of us is improving the feed efficiency and the productivity, which means reducing the feed cost and improving also the diet formulation flexibility. And I think Elisabeth will address the fact that maybe we can use a lot more ingredients in the feed formulation, but you need for that to have methods to, in fact, anticipate the quality of the raw materials. And also, we want to improve the sustainability of the egg production, and we are facing issues. I would say what is not digested, which is released in the environment, but also the image and the welfare of the animal, particularly when we talk about cage-free systems. And I would say an obsession of all egg producers is having good eggs, and we are not, there is a humoristic talk in France by an old guy talking about broken eggs, and I want to buy broken eggs because they are cheaper than fresh eggs. So he say, I want fresh eggs, but you broke the eggs for me, and then I will pay cheaper price and so on. And it was a joke around the broken eggs and whole eggs. But I think we are all concerned by that. We want eggs, optimum quality, and good characteristics and so on. And when you compare, because very often for the non-directed people involved in the egg sales and so on, we can make a lot of products with the eggs, but there is a difference in the price of the output. So when you talk about industrial egg, in fact, you have one price here. Well, I quoted a few months ago now, and when you look at table eggs, you have a better price. So obviously, there is always better value to have table eggs than, I would say, what we call the industrial eggs. So keeping that in mind, obviously reinforce the need to have a good eggshell quality, a good characteristic and stability of the eggs to be sure that you get most value of the laying flocks. And if we look at the eggs, obviously we have a few elements we are interested in. First is the size of the eggs, and it's a nutritional issue. The eggshell quality, and that is important to be able to support the best quality of the eggs. We want also to guarantee the egg freshness, particularly when we consider the breeders, where we want to transport the eggs or conserve the eggs for some while before starting the incubation. Today, more and more, and tomorrow we will talk about some nutritional value of the eggs and how to be able to enrich the eggs in some very interesting nutrients for the future. And also, very often we forget that from the nutrition or from the management, you can change also the technological properties of the eggs. And recently we run trials where looking at the capacity of the white, the albumin part, to make foams and to have a firm foam. And in fact, we were able to show that the nutrition experience of the layers before might influence this capacity of the white properties. So I think it's important. We can help the the users, I would say, of the end product, the eggs, with the nutrition properties and nutrition strategies. So obviously, when we talk about that, we talk about feed. So feed still plays a very important role on the food nutrition and on the egg industry. And I would say it's roughly common in any type of production. We could say that feed represents roughly 70 to 75% of the egg cost, and that is still a big issue like in other production. So that's why it's still interesting, even if it's today the change increment is on a few percentage and so on, you can save a lot of money on the egg production. So when we talk about the feed, we talk very often about the digestible parts. So roughly the digestible part represents 80% of the total feed. So that means that 20% of the feed is not fully digested. And it will be addressed by Bello later on to say what is this 20% in the composition, how can we improve the digestibility, and how we can go further on that. And to go further on that, it makes value. So obviously, today, if you consider that you can get 1/3 of this 20%, that means roughly 7%, that has a significant value in feed cost reduction. And for that, and thanks to the new development of our Rabio Advance, we are addressing this 7% increase with what we call the FeedDay, the Rabio Advance. And it's just to challenge the discussion, because I would say we'll try to illustrate during the presentation today and tomorrow what could be the benefits. And I say today, and Hélène has promoted the effect not only on the digestible fraction, but also beyond digestibility. When you change the substrate arriving at the hindguts, you change also the potential of the nutrients to stimulate the microbiota and to change the response of the animal. And then you increase much more the value than only the digestibility. So I would say today, we have already Rabio Advance. It has been launched successfully, but today, now it's good for layers, and that's the objective of the seminars. And so now available in layers. So it's, I would say, just to simplify and just to set up the frame, it's a unique mode of action, because today, and Bello and Elisabeth will try to illustrate better what was the change done on the microorganism to get the secretion of xylanase and arabinofuranosidase, to get a significant improvement in energy, available amino acids, and available phosphorus. And that is thanks to the debranching enzyme. But that will be illustrated later on. And that has been, I would say, published. We have published also the overall enhancement of the digestibility. But as I said before, beyond digestibility, you have also further improvement on the gut functioning and gut health. So you will see the numbers and more illustration on the different trials supporting that. And obviously, we started with broilers, we had also the turkeys, and now we will present more results on layers. And to support that, in fact, we communicate and we try to illustrate in different conditions what could be the consequence. And we go, I would say, in broilers up to the carcass quality, and in layers up to the egg. So another publication we did in Brazil, where we use on corn, soy-based diets, so the less challenging diets, but we realize today, with the right enzyme potential, enzyme profile, in fact, you get a strong efficacy on the low viscous diet, like the corn-based diets. And today, when we talk about the FeedDays, it means today we are thinking more about the global undigestible fractions and to say how to address that fraction. Obviously, when you formulate, sometimes you want to put the value on one enzyme, another enzyme, and so on. We consider today the best way to make the maximum value output of the enzyme is to consider the global undigestible fraction and the global enzyme solutions. And at the end, it's still the same. You have a cost of the enzyme supplementation, and what you want is the return on investment over this cost of supplementation. But it's better to consider the global action, because today you will see that the undigestible components are interacting each other, and the enzymes are also interacting each other. So it's better to have the global approach to get the full benefits of the enzyme. So we run earlier on this year a webinar on the global feed digestibility to really address the different issues, and Knut-Erik was there at that time with Mike Kidd and John Obley, and we tried to illustrate all the questions that can be raised on that issue of global feed digestibility. And this is on the FeedChannel platform, and today and tomorrow the presentation will be also posted on the FeedChannel platform. So you will be able to watch again the presentation by the different speakers, you know, because very often when you get the PowerPoint presentation or PDF presentation, you don't remember how the people were going from one slide to the other for the different elements. So I think it's better to watch again, and then you learn much more. And also, we have the pleasure to say that in the next PSA meeting in July in San Antonio in Texas, we will have, during the PSA conference, a feed session, again addressing the question on the global feed digestibility in the interaction between the different substrates and how we can improve that. That will be in July. The date of the session is not yet defined because it's on the official program, so it will be shortly announced. So what about feed days in layers? And I think today I'm pleased to introduce the different speakers. So first, we will have a review of what's happening on the egg market in Europe with François Cadudal from Itavi. After, we will address the question of fibers, and I think it's interesting because in layers we are talking about more rich diets, more fiber-rich diets than in broilers, so I think it's important. And Bello and Elisabeth, and we put the two names here, but they will do a joint presentation over the time just to address, in fact, what are the limiting factors, how we can improve, and how we can illustrate that and with Fideszra Advance, and how we can help the feed formulation with the technology, recent technology like PNE and so on. And tomorrow, we will look more at two other aspects. One aspect is obviously taking care of the welfare of the animals, and that is a big issue regarding the debaking or the different strategy on that, and also on the oxidative stress. When we say oxidative stress, if I ask the question in the room, maybe you would say, oh, we don't have oxidative stress. In fact, you have just to imagine the level of production of the animal today. And just for instance, in a layers or like in a broilers, the quantity of food and the transformation, the efficiency of transformations make a big challenge on the aerobic metabolism of the animal. And then that means that there is a lot of oxygen consumption and obviously a lot of generation of free radicals and so on. And that is a big issue for the animal. And we'll close the session tomorrow lunch.